First and Now is brought to you by World Vision Canada, national charity partner of the BC Lions. You can visit bclions.com/worldvision to become a supporter. We're back on this Wednesday, February 26th. It's really going to be March in a few days, is it not? Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski as always. And, Nicky, I'm here. Playing a bit hurt, but I'm here.
Yeah, apparently. Want to get into that? Vegas gotcha?
Vegas got me. Yeah, well, I'm going to say it's funny. It's funny what happens. You'll find out one day after a certain age, and it came slamming down on me this time. Was there Thursday to Sunday, and we'll talk a bit about the Four Nations later on too, but worked out great. Pretty much got to our hotel when overtime was starting, so
yeah,
didn't even bother going up. Just took our bags to the center bar and saw McDavid score. Not a lot of people in there knew what was going on, but
really?
we certainly did. Well, depends where you ask. A friend of mine who was there too, I hung out with, said he was watching down by Mandalay, the W now, which is next to Mandalay Bay. Used to be Delano's, I think, but now it's the W. He said his bar was getting into it. There was the USA chants and everything. But yeah, to kind of bring this back to where we started, I learned this time that, the first night I can stay out late, go a little hard, but after that it was a bit of a struggle. But overall, great time with my father. Saw the Canucks there on the Saturday night. Vegas took it to them and won 3-1, but overall good experience, and gotten expensive, and the old exchange rate doesn't help either.
No, yeah, that's why I think I was holding down the fort here in Surrey this past weekend. Barely even, well, it's been rainy in Vancouver, right? So barely even left the house, but I think we're like alternating vacations right now. That's how we're going about this, but we're still here for the pod.
Yeah, you went to the island, was it not?
Yeah, Tofino, never been there. Understand the hype. I'm not a surfer guy.
I've never been there, yeah.
A lot of respect. That was an honorable mention from my They Not Like Us, is people there were people surfing out there in February, and it was like 2 degrees out.
Year round.
I bet. With their wetsuits on, but pretty cool place. I would highly recommend it. Just another kind of benefit of being in British Columbia is you can draft at Tofino on the weekend.
Did you see any whales?
No, we were kind of in and out because we did Victoria too. So I was at a restaurant in Victoria for the Canada USA game. They didn't have sound on. That's a big punt for me. Is one of these big games. Like, it was a restaurant. So
yeah,
like more of like a pub too. But you gotta have sound on, especially when
what kind of a spot was it though? We're just curious.
Kind of like similar to like an Earl's or a Cactus.
Yeah, but
in the bar.
Yeah.
I think you need.
You gotta plan that better. You gotta figure out what sports bar. Like, what's the Shark Club of Victoria? That's what It could be the. I'm drawing a blank. Where we did On Tap last year.
Oh, Bard and Banker. I did go there on Friday actually.
It could be Bard and Banker. Could be the Sticky Wicket. I guarantee. You just got to plan that better.
I guess. Yeah. Hey, we did that all on Friday because we did Pagliacci's. Had to go to Pagliacci's again.
Oh yeah,
that's become my spot in Victoria. The Italian
Where'd you stay?
Marriott.
Okay.
Right downtown. It's right behind the Empress kind of thing. So it was fantastic though. But now, to get back on the track here, we're holding down the fort in Surrey, and like you said, March. It's crazy.
Yeah, our last episode we did 2 weeks ago, we had the Moj come on, and we sort of recapped a lot of the significant Lions moves in free agency. And there's been a bit more of that. We encourage you to head to bclions.com and hit up the transaction page. But sort of fresh off it this morning is the coaching staff is complete.
Yeah.
And this one... kind of a bit of a surprise. We've seen a situation like this before a few years ago with John Bowman. He had just retired as a member of the Montreal Alouettes and started coaching the Lions defensive line. And that was a situation where we were kind of rounding out the staff for what was Rick Campbell's second year, I believe. But Kristian Matte just retired on December the 5th. I looked this up as we were preparing this announcement. 14 seasons in Montreal. 8th all-time in games played for the Alouettes franchise. One of those offensive linemen that just kind of, I hate to use the term because it's overused, but I'll use it here, unsung hero. Just kind of quietly goes about his business. A division all-star twice. A Grey Cup champion in his first year in 2010. And then he lived through that big drought that Montreal had. And then won it again in 2023. and he's going to move to the West Coast and coach the running backs. So that was that's kind of the latest news coming down about an hour and a half before we're recording here.
Yeah, and excited to bring in a guy with his pedigree, right? Like you said, one of the longest tenured Alouettes ever. And, something that I remember about Kristian Matte, too, is we saw this firsthand when we were at the Grey Cup in 2023 when the Alouettes defeated Winnipeg. And we were kind of positioned in the stands pretty much right where the ceremony was happening, right? So we kind of had a front row seat to the ceremony.
And where the winning touchdown was at that end.
The Tyson Philpott touchdown. But Kristian Matte was the first guy to hoist the Grey Cup on the Alouettes. And you say unsung hero, but that just, to me, speaks to the importance that he carried in that Alouettes locker room, right? And at that point in his career, he was a reserve offensive lineman, too. He wasn't even a full-time starter. We've seen what Montreal has been able to do with their starting five, so that kind of bumped Kristian to that role that he had transitioned into, and now transitioning into a running back coach is going to be another adventure for him. So it adds to this good mix of the coaching staff too, right? You have all like the veteran, you guys got guys like Randy Melvin has been doing it for a while, but then there's a guy like Buck Pierce who was his first time head coach. Mike Benavides, a veteran in the coaching staff. So you have a really good blend, I feel like, and Kristian Matte just adds to that.
Yeah, and as far as the first guy to get the cup, is that one of those things you give it to the longest serving guy?
I think, or just importance. But usually it's if he hasn't won yet, but he had in 2010. Like Brad Marchand got it early in the Four Nations, for example.
Yeah. And then with Winnipeg, was it Jake Thomas that got it first? Was it one of those guys?
I think it was Big Hill first.
Was it Big Hill?
And then Jake Thomas.
Yeah,
I don't know.
One of those guys.
I do like paying attention to this stuff, though, like whenever they do it, especially in hockey, because I think the Stanley Cup outside of the Grey Cup is the most prestigious trophy, right? And I always like to stick around and watch that ceremony, too. The Four Nations was the same thing. I like to watch every guy do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was kind of a neat thing. There ended up being a trophy and gold medals for Canada. I'm glad about that.
It was a big deal. I tried to emphasize that as much as possible to anyone who would listen, that this was a big deal. And the players.
Would it have been as big a deal if the political climate wasn't what it was? I kind of wonder.
I think it just added fuel to the fire. I don't think that had it still would like the players wouldn't have treated it differently, in my opinion.
I was into it. I enjoyed it very much, and I got caught up in the hype by the end. But Olympics is what I'm looking forward to.
Can we get?
Now.
I couldn't help but think this on Thursday night when I'm scrolling my X or my Twitter. I'm always back and forth on X and Twitter now. I think I gotta say Twitter. I was just trying to be politically correct there with X, but
yeah.
I'm always thinking about this, especially when the timeline is just full of the hockey game. Like, how can the CFL capitalize on this? Like, I was throwing out ideas. I was like, a CFL versus NFL. I don't know if it's flag football or whatever.
Yeah,
like
skills competition.
It could be anything. Like it could be anything if it draws that hype. And Canadians versus Americans in the CFL. Well, like something would be.
I'm telling you, it was mission accomplished, and it coincides with the NBA's crappy All-Star weekend or whatever it was they were doing. And I texted you, I think last week, that the Bussin' with the Boys guys were talking about it, and
Okanagan Sun.
Taylor Lewin, one of the hosts, has a wife from Kelowna, so he was up here visiting, and those guys were getting all fired up about the anthem booing in the first Canada-US game on that Saturday night a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, pardon the interruption. Again, down in Vegas, one of the screens had it, no sound on, but you could tell that they were talking about it.
Well, Matthew's on Jimmy Fallon, Matthew Tkachuk.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And right out, he could be out for the year now. Is that right?
That would suck for my fantasy game.
So, yeah, congratulations again. And as we kind of go back and forth, but Kristian Matte rounding out the coaching staff. You said it, a good mixture of veterans and young up and comers. And it's one thing you hear about the CFL and the coaching ranks. A lot of the same guys get recycled. Yeah, that's important because you want experience, but at the same time, it has to coincide with some of these younger individuals starting their coaching career. Staying with running backs, our first podcast since we knew it was coming, but since it was official, David Mackie retired, and he has since been hired as the executive director of the Canadian Football League's Players Association. That's going to be a seamless transition for Mr. Mackie, but props to David on a solid 6-season career in Orange.
Yeah, and it's I think it goes without saying, especially if you watched Arrow up home turf, that this is going to be a big loss for this team, right? a glue guy in the locker room, a leader in the locker room, someone that, guys come to talk to, whether it's about life or whether it's about the PA or anything, right? So David played a big role. And then even in 2024, something we delved into in Arrow Up is that he started to play a massive role on the field too, as a short yardage quarterback too. So that leaves another gap in the roster. But I think
7 touchdowns.
I think something that I'm at least proud of with Arrow Up Home Turf is that if you watch that series, you could kind of understand the why into why David made this decision. I mean, he's still kind of in. I mean, maybe not so much in the prime of his career, but he's definitely not in his like late 30s when you usually see retirements, right? So leaves the game a little early, but it's because there's so much endeavors that he can go into, like the CFL PA. He's still with he's doing a strength conditioning work with Western. He runs his own personal training business. So and then he's also going to be able to be close to home, right? Because if you think about it like this, any CFL player that travels outside their home city, they do not get summers. They're on the road in summers, right? They're working. They're playing football in the summer. So I was even talking to Joanne last week too, David's wife, and I was kind of saying, like, enjoy the summers with your husband now, because that's something you haven't been able to do for almost a decade, or over half a decade now. So wish David all the best. I know we'll be seeing him around a lot. I'm sure he'll make his way out to Vancouver.
He's not going far.
It's a big loss, but also at the same time happy for what comes next for David.
And it was kind of an interesting start with he and I. You remember this incident, 2018.
Classic.
We're doing a walkthrough at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. And guys, this was kind of the era where if you just recorded guys dancing, it would go viral. It was that era of social media. Now it's kind of jumped the shark, right? We're doing way more cooler things. So I kind of felt compelled, okay, they make the rookies dance and get in the middle. And then I realized after, they were like doing it right on the Tiger Cat logo. And Hamilton, to their credit, just took it and ran with it. They did that whole thing, disrespect, whatever. And I'm okay, whatever fuels you, sure. And then Hamilton's content team, they kicked our ass that day. I think it was like 38-8 or something.
Yeah. Or
40-10, something like that. And then we got smoked there again in the playoffs a couple months later, twice. And they did this video. They kind of took David's thing and made their whole montage, and they had him like dancing on the moon and like just, wasn't my finest moment. But you know what? Hey, it got people talking. I
Hilarious
guess.
Video. I remember if you did watch Arrow Up Home Turf, there was a scene in Burlington, which is right outside of Hamilton, where David goes to dinner with Tebow, and David Menard was there, and Mario Villamazar, former Lion, and they actually brought that up. Like they still watch that video and they still joke about it. So it's an iconic memory. It's something that I've actually noticed that, at least in CFL realm, at least, that the logo, like stepping on the logo and all that, like if you're doing like dancing on a logo, I get that, but it's not so much as like hockey where you cannot step on any logo on the ground no matter what. So that it's not as important or like sacred, I guess, but it's still a big deal. Like we saw it in college football this year, the rivalry week. Like there was like several scrums at midfield, right? The Michigan, Ohio State, and all these other, Auburn, Alabama. But it's really a big deal.
Terrell Owens dancing on the star all those years ago with the Niners.
That's probably
in
the
Dallas.
most famous one, right? But
and there's that, and a lot of teams, they do it smart. They put the logo on the roof. Remember, we got the tour of the Oilers.
Yeah, that's
locker
the way to do
room.
it.
Our friend Jamie Cartmel there a couple of years ago. I remember, see, that's smart. Logos on the roof.
Yeah, because you gather to meet or to do speeches in the middle of the room, right? And if you can't step on the logo, what the hell do you do? And I think where I see NHL like behind the scenes videos, like where teams post them, a lot of time the coach is standing and the players are sitting. That's not really, at least in the Rick Campbell era, they would always do a prayer before. Rick would give his speech, and then TJ or Sook or whomever would give their speech after that.
Do the breakdown, whatever.
But they would be in the middle of the room, so it's tough to avoid the logo in that aspect, but another can of worms, I guess.
Yeah, and that's another, talking about the Mackie retirement, that's an interesting thing. We'll see. With Buck Pierce's offense, how prominent will the usage of a full-time fullback be? That remains to be seen,
Yeah.
But Dylan St. Pierre is on the roster, veteran guy coming back. You see him doing all the pub visits and the community visits. Xander Horvath one of the many running backs that have been signed. He can play fullback as well. So, and there's always the draft, the CFL Canadian draft coming up. That's what it's about. It's finding the next David Mackie that's going to be here for a number of years.
Exactly, because back in 2018 in the second round, David Mackie was that guy, right? He's just a running back out of Western. Or they actually, Randy Ambrosi announced him as a running back out of Western, but he was definitely more of a fullback build. But
long guy, and sorry to jump in, but the long guy that he ultimately replaced was Rolly Lumbala.
Yeah, another classic fullback out here in Vancouver. But there's always a lot of those guys, and that's where guys like Rob Ralph come in and scouting Canadian fullbacks. And but there's you don't have to play Canadian there. That's another thing. You can
not
make
at
that
all
position as how you see fit, right? And I think the luxury this Lions team still has is that a lot of these Canadian starters at other positions are still intact, right? So there's flexibility on this Lions roster. It's something we'll talk to Farhan about, is how they kind of, navigate this at different position groups too, right? O-line, fullback, receiver, whatever, right? Defensive backs, that's another big question coming up. But it still is a big loss, though, right? It's the stuff in the locker room, off the field, right, that you're going to miss David in a lot. But another guy that I was thankful, to get a couple years with, think about Brian Burnham retiring. That's another one. Even Lucky Whitehead, too. He just announced his retirement in the last 2 weeks. You're just grateful to be able to spend time with some of these guys, and they become memories forever.
Yeah, and a lot of comments, whether it's TJ Lee, David Mackie, Suk Chung, currently unsigned. How do you replace the leadership? Well, it's on those that are here to replace that leadership. Talking about TJ, Gary Peters still doing it at a high level. He's going to be counted on.
Yeah, he already is a leader in this room, too.
Yeah, and talking about guys who've just only been here for 3-4 years, whether that's like Justin McInnes, or you go back to the defense, Ben Hladek, wherever he fits in. These guys are going to be counted on to step up and take what they've learned from these leaders.
Yeah, Nathan's a natural leader too. Obviously, Nathan Rourke.
Absolutely.
Keon Hatcher, I think, is one of the voices of the receiver room too. So any questions with the leadership aspect of this team, I think it's still there. Covington's a guy now too that also will get vocal. And then I know we've been kind of hitting this drum or beating this drum for a little while, but Josh Woods, like he's becoming a longer tenured guy in this team too, right? And he's going to be a key player
5 years
roster,
now.
So he's probably someone in the linebacker room that you look to, ignite the defense, spark the defense and all that. And even new guys can be leaders too. Michael Alway, like I'm sure he's going to come in and be a vocal leader in this locker room too. So we'll see how that all translates once the season comes.
What does Farhan Lalji from TSN think of the Lions' additions, departures? Go a bit around the league with Farhan from TSN. We're going to do that here coming up right now on First and Now, the official Lions podcast, a presentation of World Vision Canada. All right, and off we go to Lyndon, Washington. And I'll tell you what, it's a good thing that this podcast doesn't have a salary cap, because we had Moj last episode. We'll probably have JC Abbott closer to the draft. That's his thing. And it's not often you get a Canadian Football Hall of Fame inductee, certainly. Farhan Lalji from TSN stopping by from his home office. How are you, sir? Thank you for the time.
Things are good. I should ask you guys how you are, because I was with Nikki in New Orleans, and when a young guy spends thousands of his own dollars, because we know Moj isn't paying him a lot, to stick around for an extra 3 days, to go to the game and to spend a couple extra nights on Bourbon Street, he's feeling it. And I know you were in Vegas, and you're still transitioning from young to old, so you haven't figured out how to manage Vegas yet. So it's I should be asking you guys how you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to be Moj's gopher there at those Super Bowls, so I definitely know the fiscal end of it there. But
every bar I went to on Bourbon Street, I'd walk in, and if I said I was from Canada, they'd be like, "Hey, do you know Nick from Canada?" Yeah, I do know Nick from Canada.
That bad of a reputation, hey? Well, I made it back in one piece. That's what I was saying. So, but
he was ready to sleep on my floor. You know that, Bakes?
Oh yeah, he was scrambling for a
But we took care of him.
You came through for him, which was great. And we were kind of joking off before we hit record I think this last Vegas trip, I learned for the first time, can go late, do whatever you want the first night, but after that, you just crash down. The last couple of nights, midnight, I'm like, I don't think I can do this. So you can certainly appreciate that.
I can, yeah. And Vegas and New Orleans are similar. It's just that New Orleans, if you look at Canal Street and you compare it to the Strip, there's no good casinos. There's one casino at the end of at the end of Canal, but there's really, there's not much of that. There's no great Vegas like shows, and it's kind of dirty. So when you go it's kind of like Vegas. You shouldn't go for more than 2 days or 3 days to New Orleans. 8 days for me was a lot.
I was 10 plus. I felt it. That's why I did the swamp tour on the Monday. I just had to take it easy and get out on the canal there, the actual canal.
Yeah, you only live once, right? And
you do.
The young fella here, he's got stories for the rest of his life. So there's that to it as well. Anyway, bringing it back closer to home, it's been a couple of weeks since free agent frenzy. You want to call it that? Some teams across the CFL a little more active than others, but. Keeping it local here, Farhan, as far as the Lions additions or anything that they've done up until February 11th and since then, what stood out to you?
Well, truthfully, I think they were quiet, right? And we knew they weren't going to go big game hunting and be in on some of the bigger names going into the free agency period just because of the amount of money they've got invested in Nathan Rourke and Justin McInnis and Matthew Betts, right? So getting McInnis done, when they did, I think was a big deal, right? Like I know it went right down to the end before they got it done, but both sides understood what it was going to look like. They had to get the Nathan restructure done first before they could kind of make the McInnis move official. So all of that was good. But then, I think getting Keon Hatcher done, I think was important. You can't have all young guys. And I think this is a year where Ryan Rigmaiden is going to get tested because he's the GM, so we know he's a great procurer of talent. So he gets to do that, but he also gets to make a few more decisions in terms of implementing that talent with the coaching staff. And maybe he wasn't in position to do it to that level when he didn't have the GM title and when Rick Campbell had part of the GM title. So we're going to see that, but you still can't be young everywhere. So it was important that they got Hatcher done. It was important in the secondary they got Deontay Williams signed, right? That probably is their biggest name in my estimation, a guy who can come in and be an impact physical guy at that particular position. So overall, Micah Awe, I think is a good value signing, and how they sprinkle him in will be interesting, but they were quiet in terms of the big names, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be better.
Yeah, and one area that I think maybe kind of flew under the radar the whole time was QB2. Do you let Bryce have that spot before camp? But they go out and get a veteran in Mazzoli. That's a guy you've known and spoken highly of for a long time, I think. How motivated do you think he is to prolong his career in this situation behind Nathan Rourke and helping groom a young Chase Bryce?
Yeah, I think he's motivated for all the right reasons, right? And whenever you make moves, right, the Lions, let's not lose sight of the fact that they lost some culture pieces, right? Like a guy like TJ Lee, a guy like David Mackie. Those guys, you say what you want. Like, I think everybody wanted Mackie back, but he had some other things that were pulling him back east. And say what you want about TJ's, age and things like that. Like, ultimately, those are culture carriers. So when you can bring in a guy like Jeremiah Masoli, that matters because you don't find guys of higher culture in this league than Masoli. And Masoli's not coming in to beat out Nathan Rourke. Like, make no mistake, he's competitive and is going to be ready. But there's no guarantee that he's even going to be QB2, right? Chase Bryce, I think the Lions have liked what they've seen from him. And I think that's a positive that you want to try to find your next guy, right? Like, let's not make this a league of retreads, which is not the right word for Jeremiah Masoli, but he's an older player. You know what I mean? Like, let's find the next young guy. And I think in Masoli's case, he also wants to be a coach. And when you look at this league, everybody tries to instill a version of the Trestman-Milanovic offense, right? Not everybody does it as well, but everyone tries to put in a version of that, including Jordan McSimic last year. Well, guess what? Buck Pierce doesn't run that offense, right? Like, Buck Pierce runs a different type of run game, much more play action based. It's not all the West Coast principles. So I think it's a good thing for Masoli, and he's cognizant of that I want to come in and learn something different. And that will help me as I transition into coaching, because I think in 2026 or 2027, I think that's where he sees himself.
Farhan, when it comes to the receiving corps, I think a lot of fans were, confused when they saw Alex Hollins getting released, Keon Hatcher Sr. also getting released and then brought back. But you mentioned that McInnis was kind of the first or the second domino after Rourke to fall to shape this receiving corps. But what do you currently make of that group? and how it's going to be equipped to, give Nathan Rourke his tools?
Well, I think they need a stretch player, which they don't have in terms of a veteran body. I can't speak to all the young guys that Rick Maiden's brought in. I don't know that, like, Stanley Berryhill might be faster than what they've got elsewhere in the starting group, but I don't know that he's that guy quite yet, right? Eberhardt's a young player that, we'll see what his ceiling is, right? Like, is what we saw last year kind of the player that you're going to get all the way through, as a wide receiver 5 or receiver 5, right? Which generally you try to improve on every year, or, we'll see what that looks like, but they need a stretch guy. And Alex Hollins was that player last year at the start of the season, but we saw in the second half of the season that things had changed a little bit. And I know he had some fluid drained from his knee after the year and things like that. So he hasn't got an opportunity to land quite yet, but I know that there's some teams kicking the tires, and I would imagine at some point we see him in the CFL next year. But if you don't believe he can run and separate again, because he didn't do that in the second half of the season, then you got to find that guy. So when I look at Javon Catoy, I've always felt he's been an underutilized player under McSimic, and even before that when he was here. I think he's got more to give, but he gives so much in the blocking game that teams kind of get married to him there, and we don't get to see he can do other things because he gets paid too much. Not a shot on him. He gets paid too much to do what he does, and they need to ask him to do more. And I think he's capable of doing that. And then you don't look at the salary and say, huh? Right? So then you've got Justin McInnes, and then you've got Braden Lenius, right? And this is going to be a real recovery year for him, like a show me year where he's getting in on a low contract. Now, they're not going to start 3 Canadians, but now they've got depth, right? And they've got 3 guys who you can play with and do different things with. He gives Nathan Rourke another long body, right? And then you've got Hatcher. So, and then, you've got Eberhardt, and then you've got to find 2 more, right? Like, you've got to find 5 and 6. So whether that's Berryhill, whether that's one of the rookies, whatever it is, you've got to find that. So find me a stretch guy to give you the long version of the answer.
The offensive line, Dejon Allen was the big addition prior to free agency and the trade with Toronto, but you got Broxton and Allen as your 2 pillars at the tackles. But what about the interior? How do you see that shaping out right now?
Yeah, I'm interested to see, they brought Couture back, and he didn't have a great year last year. And I love Michael, right? SFU guy. And I hope he gets a chance I hope he does bounce back. I think he'll be better, right? He'll be a better version of himself because, when offensive lines have holes, it's easy to isolate people, right? And when you have holes next to each other, there's just no running from it. So I think everybody else has the ability to make Michael Couture better. And again, some stability, right? You've got to, this is such an important year for Nathan Rourke. And there weren't guys out there that were readily available, right? Like David Beard was going back to Edmonton, in terms of high-end centers that might have been available in free agency. Guy took less to go to Edmonton. Like, he's making under $200,000 for starting Canadian, very, very good all-star level center, just because he wanted to be in Edmonton. So, when you look around at options, do you take Tristan Packer and move him inside? Maybe, right? Like, he did some good things when he was there last year, but, he'll get a chance to earn a spot. They've got enough flexibility in the ratio where they can go 3 Americans. Chris Slugger, I know there were busts at times, but from a physicality standpoint, I think he's really good. And if you fully invest in him in training camp and say, you're the guy, I don't think you're going to see those busts. I know they've brought in some good, bigger bodies. David Foucault's here, but I think he'll be a 6th. Like, I wouldn't project him to start. I hope George Una can be a guy, right? Like, you look at Calgary and some of these other teams, they just tell guys early in their career, you're in, and we'll figure it out. And I know he struggled at times in training camp, but I think there's a real ceiling there. He's a bigger physical player. Isn't afraid to maul. So I would love to see a player like Una get a chance to start. And I think by the midway point of the season, he'd be really, really good.
I know it's been a long time coming. 1st-round pick, step in and play here for the next number of years. That's what they need for sure, at least one of those. Before we quickly talk about the rest of the league, Nathan Rourke, 2022, small sample size, we all know, but how realistic getting back to that level in your mind?
Very unlikely. And look, when I say that because that was an insane level. Right?
Yeah.
Like those 8 games were ridiculous. And I don't know that anybody gets to that level again. And understand the team around him, especially offensively, was quite exceptional, right? Like, when you look at that receiving core, you had peak Dom Rhymes, peak Keon Hatcher, Brian Burnham, peak Lucky Whitehead. Like, there were dudes in that receiving core, and the offensive line was good enough. And the guy had an answer for everything. Well, a year later, and people started knowing McSimick's offense better, and he came in, and look, the receiving core wasn't as good, the O-line wasn't as good, and the room was conflicted, right? Like it or not, while nobody blamed Nathan, they were conflicted, whereas they won't be this year, right? Like it'll be Nathan's team, and he'll get a chance to grow with them in the offseason and really put his stamp on all of it. And I think that's really, really important. So I think he'll be better than last year. I also don't think he was terrible last year, right? Like there's this narrative out there that he just wasn't good. Like, come on, guys. Like there were some throws that weren't good and he didn't look as good as he did there. But, where would you put him in terms of the overall quarterback hierarchy in the league last year? I'd probably put him right in the middle. You need him better than that. And I think he'll be a top 2 quarterback in the league next year. I really do. And he'll be more than good enough for this team to move the ball and have offensive success. And then will he be QB1 league wide within 2 years? Yeah, I think he will. Right? Like I do think he's that good. I just think if you think 2022 is what you should expect out of the gate, that's a big ask.
Yeah, and I said to Nick several times, like if it wasn't for the foot injury that year, like it was on pace to push Doug Flutie's 1991 total. Like it's had been unheard of until that year. So while we got you for a couple more minutes, you hit a bit on a guy like David Beard, part of the
Explosion,
rebuild, whatever you want to call it. But
explosion.
Yeah, the tampering window serving them well. But who else do you like around the league as far as key additions and free agency?
Hey, and really quickly, as you mentioned, tampering window. For all the CFL fans that I get on Twitter that have angst about why this happens, because then free agency starts and there's no one left. Well, it happens in every league, right? Like people understand that the NFL operates the same way. Right. The NHL operates the same way. Things get decided on communication windows and they get leaked. It's just the way it is, right? So, in your mind, if you want to fast forward free agency, then fast forward it, right?
The same people who whine about the league not getting exposure, it's an extra week of exposure during Super Bowl week, is it not?
So, and that, to be truthful, that's the unfortunate part. Like I am bothered by the fact that it happens during Super Bowl week because I was literally breaking all those Edmonton signings while I was on flight to New Orleans, right? And so we do a lot of that during that week, and so we used to do free agency, Naylor and I, the first Tuesday of Super Bowl week. Yeah. So when they moved the free agency period up away from Super Bowl week, that was great, but now tampering happens then. So it'd be great if they could move it all up or all during the Super Bowl off week. But anyway, that's just first.
Get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as Edmonton is concerned, they were the easy winner, right? Like they made significant additions. And I go back to when Ed Hervey, I've said this before, when he took over as GM of the Lions, I think they kind of needlessly overspent in some areas. And I think Ed really tried to make a statement, and some of that was to come at Edmonton's expense. And they went out and went nuts with Mike Riley, and they gave him probably more than they needed to then. And then they gave Suk Chung probably more than they needed to then. And they made a big splash, but it wasn't always in the right areas. And it was maybe in position or players that had question marks with certain things, injuries and what have you. So whereas here, I think he was really sharp, right? Like people will look at the volume and say, oh, wow, he went crazy. But like when you look at where they improved and the fact that he's got 5 new legitimate Canadian starters, right? Like Canadian starters, and then you completely rebuild your defensive line. And I thought their defense was actually not bad at the end of last year, but nonetheless, you can't complain about adding a Jake Serezna and a ratio guy like Robbie Smith and so many other players. I think he was just so smart with not just how much he added, but where he added it. And, getting a guy like David Beard and, you can't, when he first took the Edmonton job a decade ago, right? I remember Ed and I talking about this at the time about how he was really targeted with position groups he wanted to rebuild. Right. And he's like, look, we can't fix this all in a year, but we can fix this part of it this year. We can fix this part of it next year. We can fit, and it was really, really segmented and broken down and deliberate, and it worked. And I think he's got an opportunity to make that work this year. Now, if anybody thinks that Edmonton's all of a sudden Grey Cup favorites, well, look at, it doesn't always work that way. I remember about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, talking to Orlando Steinauer and coming out of free agency, they were the dream team, right? Like literally, there was no way they were going to lose the Grey Cup, and they lost the Grey Cup, right? Like that was Winnipeg's first year winning it in their 5 straight appearances. And we look at Toronto last year getting pillaged during free agency, and everyone thought they were going to miss the playoffs, and they won the Grey Cup again, right?
Montreal 2 years ago.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Like you lose your quarterback and so much change, and all of a sudden they come out of nowhere and win the Grey Cup. So it doesn't always and doesn't often get decided on free agency, but I do think long term going forward, because there's also a lot of 2-year deals that Ed signed. I think it's going to be a positive for them.
So far on the West Division right now, it looks pretty even across the board to me, but it's been Winnipeg's the last 5 years. How are you seeing it stack up right now in February?
You can't ask me that. Just because I am friends or connected with every GM, everything, and then everybody gets offended. So everybody is, I don't know, everybody's 9-9. How's that?
Love it.
We love it.
That's their Andy. So it's going to be 40-37.
There'll be a lot of tiebreakers to determine who's going to get in and out of the playoffs.
Nothing wrong with some exciting races down the stretch. We saw it in the West last year to an extent. So there you go.
Yeah, look. Every year we expect Winnipeg to take a step back. Every year. This year they made a lot of changes on free agency. We don't see Winnipeg often go out and get a lot of other teams' free agents, and they're kind of doing that this year, right? And so, and they are getting older. So can they continue this without Kenny Lawler, Drew Wolitarsky? And, so I do think a slight step back is in order. I would be surprised if Winnipeg won the West and hosted the West Final again. Sask got better. Edmonton got better. I think BC, it's hard to say. And same with Calgary, right? Like, they got better. Do they get enough better? We'll see. But I wouldn't go out here and say BC and Calgary are going to finish 4th and 5th. I don't believe that, right? But, there's some teams you can obviously see get better. There's some teams that maybe have taken a slight step back, and there's some teams that are going to be a bit of a show me. So it'll be a fun West. And last year was the first year, maybe the East was a little bit better, right? Like every year we would go through the first month of the season and say the East is caught up. And then by Labor Day, we kind of laugh at that idea, and the West is clearly better. The East, I thought last year was. Let's see what it looks like this year.
There we go. Excellent, my friend. As always, glad to see the Hall of Fame plaque is front and center in the home office there. Congratulations.
The BC Hall of Fame one means a lot to me. Not the Canadian, the Canadian one does, but the BC one, just because of how awesome the people here in BC are that I've had a chance to work with, and the fact that it's got Bob Ackle's name all over it. That one's pretty cool.
Very well said.
That one is, I don't know. There, that one.
We'll see what other Hall of Fames or Halls of Fame are in your future. There you go.
The New Orleans Tourist Hall of Fame is where Nick Kowalski belongs.
Hey, I'll settle this while we're live. The sleeping on the floor thing you brought up, that is a true story. I was going down to that level. I know anything was on the table for me, but the bars, I think he would have been better off dropping Moja's name than mine.
And actually you had a small room, and like in other places, for whatever reason, we've had these bigger rooms, and I said, look, Nick, you can sleep on the floor. I'm good. I had about 5 feet of room on either side of the bed. I said, I'm too old. You can't share a king size bed with me. Like that ain't happening. So I said, no matter what, like I don't want to,
planes, trains, and automobiles.
I don't want those aren't pillows moments. So I said, you want to sleep on the floor? It's all yours, buddy.
Yeah, these are true stories. Hey, Kendrick Lamar, Moja ripped them, and are you on that page too, or what did you think of that?
No, I'm not going to rip them. I thought it was a good show, but I've seen better shows at Super Bowl, right? So even Lady Gaga recently was great, right? Like he was fine, but I'm not going to rip him, but I'm not going to say it was the best show I've ever seen.
Did you get invited to that casting call for the Lady Gaga performance? And Moj was upset that we didn't go.
Moj, I did not get an invite to the casting call. Could you imagine Moj in that show?
Handing out cigars and salmon and
poker face.
Yeah. Very well. Before this gets completely off the rails, we thank you again, sir, and I'm sure we'll see you before long.
Is it May yet? Let's do this. Come on.
Let's go. Excellent stuff with Farhan Lalji. Pretty honest assessment and, some interesting insight, great insight on Nathan Rourke. Again, pump the brakes. If everyone's expecting this guy to be on pace for 6,000 yards.
It was 7,000.
Is it? Yeah.
So
thinking the Doug Flutie range. Yeah, he was going to shatter that. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to do great things either.
No, like the standard for if you throw for 4,500 or even 5,000, you're looking at like MOP territory. So if Nathan can get to like almost half of that level that he was at in 2022, then this team is going to be just fine.
Yeah. Very well said. Excellent overview of all the additions and subtractions. And again, and to recap, as far as free agency goes, BC Lions adding linebacker Micah Awe, Adam O'Clair, Adam Konar, linebackers, quarterback Jeremiah Masoli, talked about him. David Foucault on the offensive line. And if you go back earlier, James Butler back at going to be part of a heck of a competition in the backfield. Dwayne Hendricks, who you called a sneaky good signing on the interior defensive
I'm thinking
line.
double-digit sacks. I'm still going to go on record with that.
Yeah. And then a couple of those who have departed since our last recording. Ace Ely, outstanding rookie nominee, just wasn't going to be a fit with this logjam at linebacker. Quickly released and signed by Ottawa, joining William Stanback, incumbent Lions linebacker. Other key departures, Manny Rugamba, again, one of those who earned a spot, kind of an unknown American, played 3 years, scooped up in free agency in Edmonton. Josh Archibald, picked up in Montreal. Seontae Evans, a veteran addition in defensive backs, signed with Toronto. Adrian Green, Canadian draft pick to Calgary. Jashron Antwi, hardly knew ya, traded for the running back late last season. He's back in his hometown of Calgary.
Didn't even get to do the fake punt or the first down punt with Jeshurun.
Well, we can say this now. They did it in practice at least once.
Yeah.
I think it was before the playoff game.
Yeah. It was definitely in the playbook. But
the squib punt.
The opportunity. Yeah. Well, I think the trick play in that game was Vernon Adams Jr. punting.
Yeah.
This coffin corner punt.
Yeah. Third down, looked like they were going to gamble, and then he... Yeah.
And that's why we can't disclose anything, too, because Stephen Chang and I were on the sideline in Regina. I think I've told this story, but I told Stephen before it happened that, hey, it's coming. Like they're punting here.
Yeah.
Rick called a timeout, or Coach Rick called a timeout, and then you could tell it was a 3rd and 2 situation from like the 46. It was windy, so you kind of...
Not field goal range.
Yeah, the perfect situation where you need like a 2nd and 25 for that Antwi thing to come to and make it possible. So
reset the sticks, yeah.
Yeah, but best of luck to all those guys.
100%.
It's fun. It's fun seeing all the off-season changes.
'Tis the season indeed. All right, we got trivia. What do we have?
Yeah, so like I said last episode, just to fill some time and not as much to talk about in the offseason, we're gonna start hitting you with some trivia. And this is a question that I sparked my interest when you think of David Mackie no longer being with the team, Suk Chung and TJ Lee do not have contracts anymore. So I don't know if you can already tell where I'm going with this question. Bolacumbo also just
Canadians?
Retired. No, I am going the longest tenured BC Lions.
Okay.
As of right now. So the ramifications of this, or the specifications of this, is that if they left, so like a guy like Matthew Betts or Nathan Rourke or even Jalen Edwards-Cooper, their tenure starts as when they sign their last contract, right? So like
Sean White.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but Jalen would be 2024, for example, just to specify that. Can you do this in order? You think you can do this?
Probably not in order.
Well, we'll see how good you can get this, but I have the top 15. So I listed them in order. I did the research with
Gary
Steven
Peters.
Gary Peters is number 1.
There we go.
February 13th, 2018. He's number 1.
Ben Hladek.
Ben Hladek is number 5. He's May 4th, 2021.
2021 draft pick.
So there's 3 guys from 2018 that joined this team.
Still 3 guys? Yeah.
There's 4 because Gary's 2018, but Gary is the longest by date.
He's not 2018, but Tyler Packer's been a while.
Tyler Packer was the same day as Ben Hladek because they were drafted together. So technically Ben Hladek was a linebacker.
I can't do this in order.
That's good though. He's number 6. So you got 3 of the top 6 right now.
Okay. Josh Woods.
He is number 9.
Number 9.
He's also 2021. So
2021.
2 guys in 2021 as well.
2 guys in 2021.
And 3 in 2018.
Jarrell Broxton.
That's 2021.
2021.
He was May 2021. He's kind of sneaky, been here a while, right? He's number 7 on this list. 7th longest tenure BC Lion, Jarrell Broxton.
Jarrell Broxton, yeah. It was 2021 training camp.
Yeah.
2018, wow.
The other 2021 guy's a camp guy too.
Wow.
Starter.
You might be, I must still be recovering from Vegas because I can't.
He made his impact. He made an impact in 2021, this guy too.
Sione.
Sione's December 2021. He joined in 2022.
But he's in the top 15.
He's 10th. Yeah, he's 10th. That's a good one.
Okay, let's keep going here. Javon Catoy.
Javon Catoy is a 2018.
Yep. Knew he was for sure 2019, if not 2018, but there you go.
This is going to give away the 2021 guy because I laid out the specifications at the top. This guy technically, if we're going by these rules, his tenure is 2025.
Right.
Do you get what I'm getting at?
Yep.
but for this sake, I have him at 2021 because this absence was so short-lived. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
You know where I'm going with this?
No.
He was not a BC Lion for about 48 hours. But I don't
Keon Hatcher.
Yeah, Keon Hatcher is the other guy in 2021. So I'm counting him as 2021.
We technically never released him.
Yeah. Because it was before free agency, right? Yeah. So you're missing two 2018
But people think
guys.
he was released, then re-signed. It never got to the release
stage.
part.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
2018, though, two more guys. You got Katoy and Peters. These guys were both May of 2018.
2018.
One
wow.
was a draft pick. One was an unsigned.
Oh, Isaiah Messam.
Isaiah
That's
Messam
gotta
is
be
the
one.
draft pick. So he's number 2.
Okay, and the other one was a camp guy?
On free agent. Undrafted free agent.
Undrafted. Oh, of
Yeah.
course. Sorry, Andrew. Andrew Pearson.
Andrew
Yeah.
Pearson. So there you go. You got Peters, Messam, Pearson, Haladic, Packer, Broxton, Hatcher Sr., Woods, and Tuihema wrap up the top 10. And then there's the other guys are all 2022.
So who am I? How many do we need here? Out of the top 15?
That's pretty good for top 10. I listed it. But Sean White would be next in order as 11th.
Yep.
Thibaut Debaye would be after.
Okay.
And then Nathan Cherry. They were the same day.
Yep.
May 3rd, 2022.
Riley Pickett. Got to be in there.
Riley Pickett is correct. May 3rd, 2022 as well. And then number 15 is Max Royer, brought in September of 2022.
Yes. Okay.
Because we picked him up in Montreal.
I'm ashamed it took me long to get Andrew Pearson and Isaiah Messam.
That's pretty good. Order.
Yeah.
I knew an order would be pretty tough.
Yeah.
I think you nailed that for the most part too. Like guys like Josh Woods.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of crazy to think though? Like I know continuity is a big thing, and I still think it exists in this roster. You look, it's a lot of 2021 guys here, but in 2018 there's 4 guys still. But it shows the life of a CFL player. It's not forever, right? Things change quick.
Very good. Well done. I like that one.
Yeah, I thought I was interested in my own. I would have done it myself, so thought why not?
There we go. And we educate some of our fans and listeners in the process. All right, go for it or punt as we get close to wrapping things up here. Nikki, what do you got?
It's got to be 4 Nations related, right? But I'm gonna kind of say specifically the social content that came from the 4 Nations tournament. Obviously, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is the Freebird. That, whatever algorithm I had on TikTok and Twitter, that's all I saw for about a week. Different videos of fan submissions and all that, because that was America's Gold song, the Leonard Skinner all-time guitar song. But then like the stuff with the group chat banter that got out with the Chucks and JT Miller. I was just listening to Brady Tkachuk talk about that. JT Miller was actually the one that kind of reminded them on the game day, saying like on a group text while they were having their pregame nap, saying, "Hey, is this going down? Are we doing this?" And the 3 fights in 9 seconds is what I'm alluding to. But then, even seeing stuff like Patrice Bergeron meet up with Sidney Crosby and Brad Marchand after they won the gold medal, the Quinn Hughes drama that came on the week.
He was flying in to save the day.
Part of my take, one of my favorite podcasts, they flew in or they didn't fly him in, but they found a Canadian, and then he was Rick Nash's best friend, and this guy was just a complete lunatic on their stream. So I was loving the content all week. I thought that's what made the tournament too. We talk about the exposure. Social media, I think, just elevated that to a whole nother level.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, all these American podcasts we're talking about, you just mentioned Pardon My Take. I've mentioned a few others. Colin Cowherd, one of my favorite American hosts, never talks hockey. Never. And it's not because he doesn't like it. He even says it's because his listeners have no time for it. He talked about it and he praised it. So that's a big win, no doubt.
Yeah, just a great tournament. Shout out McDavid getting his 2010 or his iconic moment.
Yeah, there you go. Now he has that. Add that to the resume.
The fitting ending. I was actually going through my closet this week. One of my favorite pajama shirts is it's from Cheerios. Ironically, I guess it was when they were just giving out.
Did you wear this on Farhan's floor in New Orleans?
No, I didn't bring it to New Orleans. I usually wear it at home, but it says 3-2, and then you quiz me. I'm gonna quiz myself. I think it's a 7:49, and it's the time of Sidney Crosby's golden goal.
Okay, 7:40. I want to say.
7:40. Yeah. So top of my head, I knew it was like a 7 and 4 in there, but that's all. It's just a gray shirt with those on it, and you know what it is without knowing what it or having to explain it.
I like that. I'm going to get one of those. All right. Here's what I love. Going back to Vegas, I know everyone, it's been talked about before, the cool things the Golden Knights do with their game presentation. One thing, Dad and I out having a pregame beer on the patio at the Beer House, which is a good establishment just steps from T-Mobile Arena. The Golden Knights drummers, cheer team, and their lead guy who gets on the bullhorn, they do a march right past that, and they stop, and the guy gets on the bullhorn, and he'll say something funny about Vancouver or whatever. That's just a cool thing to the environment. Fan marches. I know it's more of a soccer thing. It was a Grey Cup. There was a Grey Cup one. March, so there you go. I love this. That's a very cool part of it. Was on my Instagram story for 24 hours.
Yeah, because the Whitecaps do that too, and I think when they have the BC Place games, so if there's a market for that.
They used to, from one of the pubs downtown all the way to BC Place.
The Grey Cup one was really cool, though. I know Taylor put a nice little video together of it on game day. So yeah, just if that's the experience, why not? Right? That's what it's all about. It's why you go.
Yeah, it's one of the things you look forward to for sure. All right, what are you punting?
I have a good one here. I'm not sure if you saw this already, but Adrian Wojnarowski, also known as the Woj, not to be mistaken with the Moj, but the Woj, one of the NBA's all-time insiders, recently retired. This week, he decided that he is going to be selling his iPhones that he used to break several news stories. So looking at his site right now, you can go put it's an auction style, so you can go put offers on these. But the iPhone that he used to break the Paul George and Kawhi signings to the LA Clippers is currently offered at $5,000. Just to buy that iPhone that he doesn't use anymore. His credential for the 2023 NBA draft, somebody's bid $900 on that.
Oh wow! Stop me.
I'm punting that though.
But there's another layer to this. The money is supposed to go toward the NIL fund for whatever college team.
St. Bonaventure?
Yeah. But I'm with you. This just reeks of ego, self-serving. But, as we're seeing, there's people out there who are going to pay it. So
Not me, though. That's just crazy to me. But there's stuff like cameos.
Should we auction off my MacBook? Because it's the one that I posted that we're signing Nathan Rourke again.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the comparison.
Get a young Judd or someone would pay for that.
Who knows? But that's my punting too, or my thing.
I'm with you.
Bonus thing. Did you see Dustin May?
No.
So do you know who that is? He's a Dodgers pitcher.
Yes, I know. Yeah. I didn't see this salads thing.
He had to get. So I'm punting salads this week because Dustin May had to get undergo emergency surgery because he scratched his throat while chewing on a piece of lettuce. It almost killed him.
Yeah, you could choke on that, right?
So I guess we got to punt salads. Diet will start next week after.
Or give it an inspection. Yeah. I'll tell you what, went to one of our favorite Vegas spots, Andiamo's Steakhouse on Fremont Street.
Yeah.
The best Caesar salad I've ever had. So can't punt that one.
I'll give a free shout out to the Buono Astoria out in Gibson's there. I went there this summer.
Yeah, that's right.
Wally Buono's it's his son, right?
Son.
Yeah, his son's restaurant.
Michael.
That Caesar salad is fantastic.
Have to get there. Still on the list. Get Dwayne Johnson to hook you up, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, call Moj.
But anyway, so you're punting salads. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I got it. I don't want to choke on or get my esophagus
Be careful.
scraped.
You don't want to chip your tooth on a hard crouton or anything. It's serious business.
Scary times out there, yeah.
Okay, here's one for me. Here's one for me that you're seeing again. There's these Americans that respond to losing best on best, like the Four Nations. Oh, but no Stanley Cups in Canada since 1993. Yeah, okay. Why do some people think that's reflective of international capabilities? I looked this up. Last year's Cup champion was the Florida Panthers. Their roster for the season, 12 Canadians, 3 Americans. So, can we put this to rest?
Yeah. I've never understood that. The cup not going to Canada.
Then you see the NFL memes account post that America's won 59 Super Bowls. Yeah, okay, pal. They call themselves world champions where they're the only country competing. It's a joke.
Somebody did a Grey Cup mock-up to America.
I saw that.
America had won.
Yeah, 1 in 111. That's right.
Yeah, so we have that going for us. It's the same exact argument.
Oh, yeah, just put it to rest. They'll always have the Miracle on Ice in 1980, I guess, the Americans. So.
Yeah, that was a big part of their promo, I saw.
As it should. Yeah. That's all they've won in international hockey.
Mic drop.
96 World Cup. Okay, I guess that counts, but it's been 29 years. All right, we'll wrap it up with a little They Not Like Us, and it looks like we're sticking with the Four Nations.
Yeah, it was the talk of the town last week. They Not Like Us, it's got to be Jordan Bennington, and in specific his clutch gene, because it doesn't make much sense, right? Like he's having right now I was looking at his stats this season. His save percentage is under 900. But then in these must-have situations, like you go back to Game 7, 2019 and at Boston, stops 32 of 33 shots and gets the Blues' first ever Stanley Cup. And that's how he makes his name, right? There's that all-time clip before the game where he asks the reporter if he looks nervous. And he actually recreated that. I saw it on Overdrive this week. But the Four Nations, 31 of 33 saves in overtime. He was so massive there, right? And the clutch gene is, the notion of athletes being clutch and like quotations is always something I find interesting, right? Because I think there is something to it, like the clutch gene existing. You can't quantify it, but I mean, a guy like Keon Hatcher, to relate it to the BC Lions, like he was getting 130 yards a playoff game before his Achilles injury, like just ridiculous, right? So
you go to the NBA, a guy in the past like Robert Ory, big shot
Michael
Bob
Jordan
in the playoffs,
like it's a real thing. I think because you do like in intense situations, nerves or pressure, whatever, it gets to you, right? Like you think about it, and if somebody, I guess guys like Jordan Bennington or Robert Ory, they just find a way to persevere through that. So Jordan Bennington, like he is as clutch as they come, and turn out to be the right guy for Canada and net.
And he's got to be the guy in Italy.
Yeah,
the Olympics next year, right?
Logan Thompson, if he keeps this up, I think he's like 25-2 this season in Washington. So.
We'll see. A lot of time.
Yeah, a lot of time.
All right, I'm going Sidney Crosby trophy case. How about this? 3-time Stanley Cup winner, 2-time Olympic gold, a World Cup in 2016, fresh off the Four Nations. He won a World Championship gold in 2016. That doesn't seem right. He won the Stanley Cup that year. 2015 World Championship, excuse me. Anyway, you know what I'm getting at. World Juniors way back in 2005. Individual awards include 2 Hart trophies for NHL MVP, a pair of Conn Smythes for playoff MVP, Art Ross as leading scorer, Rocket Richard as leading goal scorer, twice each. Now, I know Wayne Gretzky won something like 9 Hart trophies in a row, but when you look at every possible thing to win in hockey, Sidney Crosby's right there.
Yeah, Mount Rushmore of players, right? Lived up to all the expectations. Because you got him, if we're just quickly doing this, the Mount Rushmore of hockey players, Gretzky, Crosby,
Bobby Orr.
Yeah, Orr, and then who's
Gordie Howe?
Gordie Howe, probably, right?
Yeah, do you leave out a Mario Lemieux?
Yager, too? Like, this guy, Messier?
Yager, no. Yager's no. He's great, but
just
he doesn't belong with those guys,
Kind of like the Kevin Glenn.
Yeah. Well,
Yager's still doing it.
I don't want to disrespect Kevin
There's
Glenn.
No disrespect either way. They're legends of the game either way. But.
It's funny, though. Had Yager not gone to the KHL for 3 years, he probably could have challenged Gretzky's record for goals.
Well, he's still playing right now, right?
Yeah, well, we don't count this. You don't count the 3rd division Czechia. Like,
it's pretty ridiculous. So he is, how old is he right now? He's 53.
How many NHL goals has he got there?
766.
So there you go. Had he not gone for 3 seasons, he would have pushed that. But he did, and that's part of it. So, yeah, you can the Mount Rushmore topic's a good one. You can debate that for days, and I think a lot of these guys we've talked about are worthy. There you go. The next time we do this, it'll be the 2nd week of March. Where's the time go? First and now, a presentation of World Vision Canada, worldvision.ca to become a supporter. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you to Farhan Lalji, and we'll be back in a matter of days.